Nassau County Executive Laura Curran is with us. And first of all, for the Nassau County Exec, we want to thank you for joining us. But we also want to mention that we are very thankful for your leadership and the things that the hard work you've been doing with the COVID. I know you already have a job that just keeps your plate stocked, and then we got hit with the virus. And you're becoming a regular TV personality, though. I see you every day out there. How's it going so far?
Well, they tell me I've got a great face for radio, so.
No, that's mine.
We're familiar with that.
That's me.
I am honored that I am your guest for your first show back. That is awesome. So thank you very much for having me. It certainly has been an interesting 6 months between COVID and the storm and the outages and the sharks and the civil unrest and everything that's happened. It's been a big, big year. But I think it sort of shows regular folks how important county government is. I mean, we do have such a confusing patchwork quilt of municipalities and towns and villages and county. You know, a lot of people aren't really sure what it is that the county does. So we're the ones with the health department. We're the ones with the ambulances and the medics and social services that were really working on all cylinders throughout COVID. And we're the ones in charge of public safety as well. And I know we're always looking to improve relations between police and community. And that's something that I think we've been ahead of the curve on, and we're always striving to do better. And of course, continuing to strive now. So I think it really highlights everything it is that the county actually does for people, for our residents.
Definitely making government personable, and like you said, it's important at times of crisis that people really understand, like you said, all the things that they might not understand during good times that we need to be there for us. So I guess to that point, I know, like you said, we've been off the air for a while, and a lot has changed since we were last recording. So you want to just give us and our listeners just a little overview of where we kind of have come from, where we were and where we're at now in the county with some of the metrics and COVID and just everything else, I guess, that's been going on.
Absolutely. So, at the peak in April, we were having hundreds and hundreds of new cases every day. We lost, well over 2,000 of our residents. But I have to say, today is actually the 100th day from the beginning of reopening of phase 1. And since that time, that 100 days, our rates continue to go down. Our hospitalizations continue to go down. Our fatality rate is very, very way down. And that's really thanks to our amazing residents, to our amazing businesses who I was confident and remain confident can reopen in a way that's safe. Because as we know, there was the health aspect, and it was very, very difficult days at the beginning of the surge when there's so much that we didn't know then about the virus. We were worried if the hospitals would be able to manage, would be able to have the ventilators and the PPE and the staffing necessary to handle this. And we were really right up against it to the point where it was almost a crisis. But I had weekly calls with the administrators of the hospitals and able to coordinate and help them get what they needed and help them share services. They did a fantastic job. And then we saw the numbers start to level off and then go down again. And I think that's when we could all first breathe a sigh of relief. But then right on the heels of that sigh of relief came the reality of the economic devastation. So we have federal money that we've been supporting the food banks, Island Harvest and Long Island Cares, and doing food distributions, food banks. And we've helped put food on the table of about 25,000 Nassau families throughout the county. But the need is growing. I mean, the need is still there. Last July, we were about 3.7% unemployment. This July, 14% unemployment. So think of all those lost paychecks and those lost jobs. That's why I was really fighting for businesses to come back. If they could come back safely, it's so important that they came back, because this is real lives that we're talking about here.
Definitely. A lot of money that, isn't going back into the economy also. And I know the big issue too is federal funding and, seeing what will happen from that level and, why it's so important. It's good to see the bipartisan support around the issue. It's hard to get sometimes, but definitely it seems like we know why it's so important.
Yeah, you're so right about that, John.
Those unemployment figures, those the new ones? I think
that was July. That was actually July.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So
I think some
you know,
new ones are being released today, or
I think
they're on
so.
new.
Yeah, soon.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see what August look like.
Yeah. I was telling the guys before we went on the air that a lot of people I know are in the entertainment industries and guys that play on Broadway, and this is an industry that's they're all looking to retrain and find something new to do, because they really don't see that it's going to come back in a timely fashion to to help them out. We just saw yesterday the club in Amityville that closed, the Revolution.
Yep.
Dance hall, and where a lot of starting acts. That's where they got their start, and so their concern is can the county or anybody doing anything to try to help that to not be a trend? I don't know what the answer would be.
That's a really, really big issue. I think about Broadway. I think about all of the jobs on Broadway, all of the ancillary jobs, the restaurants and hotels and everything else. And then you think about the costume makers, the costume cleaners, the wig makers. I mean, all of those businesses are also suffering as well. Plus, it's such a driver for the economy of our entire region. I heard somewhere it's like a $14 billion industry all told, something like that.
Yeah.
So, this is very, very small, what I'm going to say now, but something that I've been pushing for is our comedy clubs. We've got great comedy clubs. A lot of great comics come from Long Island. We breed funny people. What can I say? Yep. And they can't operate, which makes no sense, because basically, I visited Governor's in Levittown. And basically what it is a restaurant/bar, which can be open at 50% capacity. They've got the air filter. They've got the capacity at 50%. They've got the sanitation and the plexiglass. The only difference is that there's a little stage with surrounded by plexiglass. So the guy telling the jokes with the microphone on a little stage can't contaminate anyone if he or she is sick. But yet they can't open. So it's a small thing. It's not Broadway, but it's jobs. It's a source of fun for people, and it can be done safely. Yeah, Broadway shows, that's a different kind of economics. Actually, today I'm visiting a bunch of movie theaters here in Nassau just to check their protocols, because I was lobbying that bowling alley should open. I was lobbying that gyms should open after I went and had a look at what they were doing, and I felt confident myself. If I felt confident that I could go or send my mother or my kids, then I felt that I could advocate for them. So now I want to look to see about movie theaters, because again, employs a lot of people. What do their protocols look like? I'm going to check that out and make the case, advocate for them if I feel confident they can do it safely.
Yeah,
that was a recent story too. That I think it was AMC is going to open up 140 theaters, but none of those are in New York.
No, heartbreaking.
Yeah,
well, because I guess of the rules and the protocol, but like you said, it's got to be safe. Got
to be safe.
But it is good to see that we are trying to make lemonade out of lemons, and you're seeing the success and the popularity of the outdoor, not just dining, but the movie screenings and a lot of the other events that have been happening in the county. I guess that was a curiosity of ours, maybe talking about the difference between the restaurants reopening, which I know you've been a big advocate for, and thankfully we've been able to have that safely done with capacity restrictions and some other, obviously, COVID guidelines. But why specifically those comedy clubs and those other entertainment, cultural institutions still aren't necessarily, able to fit into those guidelines yet?
The word I hear all the time is arbitrary. If we can open school, why can't we go to the movies? If I can go to a restaurant, why can't I go to a comedy club? If this, then why not that? And I hear that. I really get it. I understand that we want to keep the rate low. I understand we have had a lot of success in New York, and we want to keep it going. We don't want to jeopardize that. But if we can do it safely, let's do it. Why not?
Yeah. What do you foresee as far as I know somebody who works with severely handicapped children. So they're they've had 4 days of school this week, but that's without the kids there yet. That's going to happen Tuesday. And what do you foresee? Are we going to see a spike from all these kids going to school? And
I've got kids. I've got two of my youngest are still in school, middle school and high school. So I'm in there with everyone else. This is one of the things about life now, and you could say life in general. We just don't know. No. I'm confident as a parent. I'm confident sending my children to school. I feel that my district, I live in Baldwin, I feel like my school district has done everything that they can to do it safely. It's going to be a hybrid model. It's been very well thought out. My kids are starting on Tuesday, and I've spoken to other superintendents in our other 55 school districts, and I feel confident that they have thought of everything. They're following the governor's protocols. They're talking to each other. They're working with our health department at the county. So you can't make everything 100% safe in life, but you make the best preparations that you can, and you take those precautions, and then you go about life as much as you normally can. So we've never seen this particular movie before. We don't know what the plot twists are going to be, what the story arc is going to be. We don't know what curveballs this virus might throw at us. But if we prepare, we've learned a lot about masks and social distancing and sanitizing your hands. We know that it works. So if we just continue with those common sense protocols, my prediction is that we're going to be okay.
Yeah, we definitely hope so. And let's just remind our listeners that we are listening to this week's Long Island News, and we're here with County Executive, Nassau County Exec, Laura Curran, and you're listening to 90.3 WHBC, the voice of Nassau Community College.
All right, John.
So speaking of college, so since we're on the community college station, let's talk about, we talked about K-12, let's talk about college now.
Definitely.
That's interesting. You know, we saw what happened at Oneonta, and now they're going to be suspending or doing remote learning for the first part of the year.
Yep.
That's a different environment. It's older folks. It's, it's not as regimented because older folks, have more freedom.
Exactly.
So again, I have spoken with the leaders of our colleges here in Nassau. We've got a lot of wonderful colleges, and I think Nassau is a jewel in the crown. The administration and the faculty and everyone else I believe they have done everything they can to get ready. The right kinds of choices, the right kinds of recalibrations, because first and foremost, what's more important than safety? Nothing.
Of course.
Learning doesn't happen if people aren't safe.
Definitely. And to that point, I know it's been a big discussion between not only the administration, but also the teachers, the parents, the students themselves. So I guess where do we stand in some of those distinctions? I know, are the teacher unions kind of universally signed on now? And I know there's still some issues in the city happening where they had to postpone the start. So are we seeing that happen in Nassau also, or is that kind of not as much, thankfully, an issue?
Well, the interesting thing about Nassau is that each district has its own teachers union. So I think you'll find a spectrum in relationships. So in my district, from what I hear, the relationship is good. There's a lot of cooperation. If you're a teacher, you're older, you're more vulnerable. I would understand the fear of going back into the classroom and perhaps exposing yourself. So just like we want to take care of our kids, we want to make sure that we're taking care of our teachers as well.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, that's the other issue, too, is how many substitutes are available. Because if teachers start dropping out, we're going to need to replace them if they're going to keep the school open.
Yeah.
The other issue that somebody brought up that I hadn't even thought of was school nurses.
Definitely.
There's one for every school, but if she or he gets sick, there are no replacements, really.
That's a very important issue. You want to make sure you have qualified nurses in each of our schools. My sister-in-law is actually a school nurse, and if she's not there, what's going to happen? It's a good question. I mean, the other thing is, one thing we've got going for us here in Nassau is that teachers love working in Nassau. So if openings happen, I think it's competitive. It's competitive salary. It's a good gig. I think that we would get good folks to come and work for us here in Nassau.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of a balance because there were some teachers that were on the verge of retirement, and a lot of them decided to go.
Yeah.
They just said, I don't, the extra year or two that I'm going to add to my retirement is not worth putting myself in that, situation. But like you said before, we're actually going to have to wait and find out what it's going to be. In the case of the nurses, when you think of the school nurses, if somebody does get sick during the day, who's going to be the point man is going to be the school nurse who is going to evaluate.
The schools are going to have to put procedures in place to make sure that there's a substitute ready to come.
Yeah.
Maybe that will involve sharing among schools. They'll have to make it work.
Yeah,
That's an
test and
idea.
trace program participation and all the other types of things. I'm sure that they're all going to have to worry about. I guess, just to move maybe towards some other topics, obviously everything is interrelated and, everything is kind of overshadowed or, shaded by the COVID crisis. But in terms of additional local economy issues, can you talk a little bit about two big issues that, definitely have been in the news, the MTA funding and how that obviously impacts a lot of commuters in Long Island on the LIRR, and another issue that we're interested in is the Nassau Coliseum across the street. But I guess, could you just speak to those two issues briefly?
Sure. So, the trains, as we know, have been running throughout the pandemic, getting essential workers in and out of the city where they need to go. But they, like so many other groups and entities and organizations, have a money problem because you'd go, you'd see the train rattle by with maybe one head in there. That was it.
Yeah.
So lower ridership and so reduced revenue, obviously, a really serious issue. They kept their workers. They kept their workers working. And now they're faced with some really, really tough decisions. So they're grappling with raising the fare, cutting the workforce, and lessening the schedule, which is a shame because I really do believe a vibrant transportation system is key to our rebounding. We need people to get to work. It's sort of the veins. It's the life where the lifeblood flows. Those are the people to get to work, to get to school, to get to where they need to be. And, my concern is what impact this will have on our recovery overall.
Definitely.
Well, I think one of the big issues is that I think they spoke about Google. And because of the virus, a lot of their workforce stayed at home and worked from home. And they decided after the immediate danger was over that, this isn't so bad. We don't have to pay for office space. They told 40% of their workforce staying home. So when we all said we want to get back to work and going, I think we had this image in our head that it was going to be the way it was before this happened. And I don't think we're ever going back there. So the MTA is not going to look at a renewed and a research, all the people going back to work, there's only half the traffic now.
Yeah.
And half the ridership. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
And
it's good for the individual people. They save money on traveling. They roll out of their bedroom and into the kitchen to their computer screen or wherever they're hanging out, and they go to work.
Yeah,
right.
But that's important to recognize that there's still a digital divide issue that happens with students with different segments of the workforce, where certain workforces, the more white collar as opposed to the more blue collar essential workers, they might not have that opportunity, unfortunately. So that's like you said.
If you're doing landscaping, you can't work at home.
No, exactly.
And you have to go cut somebody's trees, and
you rely on the nice buses and again other methods of transportation that might be overlooked.
But you just look at the redistribution of finances and people's personal finances. The amount of people going to work and not going to work, it's changed the whole landscape of everything.
That definitely.
It really has.
I guess also to that point, I know you've been a big advocate for hazard pay. Can you speak about why you think that, again, is so important for, again, essential workers? I know for especially our grocery store or hospital workers to get the compensation that, is fair for when they're at risk.
Yeah, before we get to that, I just want to touch just touch on public transportation a little bit more. We are a suburb of New York City. We're wonderful as ourselves, but we are a suburb of New York City. And one thing that's very interesting, I was talking to real estate experts, real estate brokers yesterday, and I talked to another one this morning. They're seeing a huge influx of city people buying. And I'm talking about those expensive North Shore homes to starter homes down on the South Shore. Some people are buying them sight unseen. Some people, there's bidding wars going on like crazy. People are looking for the space. And we're also getting interest from commercial real estate folks. So, Bill, what you were saying about how, we're all going to work in our living room in our sweatpants these days, maybe some of those big Manhattan firms or city firms are going to have smaller outposts here in the suburbs just to keep it safer for their workers. So this is an opportunity for us. But, and I say this caveat with a lot of emphasis, short term, I think it's going to be good for us. But because we are a suburb of New York City, we do rely on the city being a vibrant economic driver. People live in Nassau because of its proximity live in Nassau because of the proximity to the city. So it's in our interest for the city to come back. I mean, I was there recently in Midtown on a weekday at lunchtime, and there was nobody around. I felt like I was in a movie. It was bizarre.
Very surreal.
And we talk about Broadway. We talk about people moving out. We talk about people not needing office space. These are things that really concern me because we're one region. We love Nassau. We live in Nassau, but we are connected to the rest of our region. Go ahead.
One of the news stories was about how many available apartments there were in New York City, like 13,000, which is a scary number. But the other thing too, this is an opportune time for I guess big bucks people. They could sit around and wait, and some people can't afford their lifestyle anymore, and they can't pay their mortgages. They're going to be moving out of their houses, and this is an opportunity for somebody with money to come in and buy a few properties.
Absolutely, you know those people are out there looking around. Yeah,
definitely.
Looking at what opportunities there are, and that makes me optimistic that we will come back. The people still see this as something worth investing in.
When we're talking about mortgages, people had talked about it was a kind of a simple answer. They just said, okay, if you can't pay your mortgage for these 6 months, why don't they just tack it on to the end of the so instead of in 25 years, you're going to be 25 years and 6 months. That's how long your mortgage will last. And that kind of thing never really did take off, did it? So that people are actually being foreclosed on or have to move out because the banks didn't really give them any leeway. They wanted their money now.
Yeah, there were state enacted moratoriums, and seeing that as we move further away from the peak of the crisis, like you said, how many people where thankfully we've recovered as a county from the actual COVID issue, but like you said, economically, so many families are still not recovered and still in a position to maybe meet some of those basic financial needs, and how that impacts, like you said, the larger economy, the property owners, and the tax revenue, obviously, and a lot of things are connected. And that kind of brings us back to maybe that question that I had asked before about the Coliseum. Obviously, we know you're a big Islanders fan, and I know we had a little bit of a rough outing last night. But we're keeping it suspenseful, though, at least. So
it's going to be interesting. We can guarantee that. Undoubtedly,
Game 7 is definitely always something that you never really want, but you always like to see, especially if you come out the winners on the other side. But I guess So is that something that you think is going to be impacted in terms of the projection? I know the work has been done pretty steadily even throughout the crisis at Belmont, but in terms of if you have a stadium built but the capacity isn't allowed to come into the building, what are we doing? I guess
Well, that's such a great question. So to me, this is a reason for optimism. Belmont is on track to open at its original opening schedule just in time for the next season to 2021. So that's good news. They lost a little bit of time in construction through COVID, but they made it up in no time flat. It's a well-run operation. Now, we need a vaccine. We need a vaccine so that we can get back into the arenas and make sure that this place is a success. Yep. I know the best minds in the world are furiously working on a vaccine, are working on a treatment. So I am confident that we will be in a place where we can open Belmont and open it. I have to get used to calling it the UBS Arena, where we can open it successfully. And it's great for the Islanders. It's great for our self-respect as an island. It's great for jobs, economics, and the fact that this private entity with no taxpayer dollars is investing in Nassau is a beautiful thing. They see value here. That's great. Then you talked about the Coliseum. What is it? 12 miles down Hempstead Turnpike. We had a bit of a hiccup in our plan with the Coliseum because the tenant, it's county owned. But so we had a tenant there that was operating it. And then they, towards the end of the surge, broke up with us. Yeah. And they said, we don't want to be your tenant anymore. And they left. They're leaving. So we had to really scramble to find someone to operate in the meantime while we look for a longer term operator. So it was a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of lawyers, a lot of going back and forth, late night weekends, getting done a deal to get an operator in place so that should we be able to play this season, I guess it's going to start a month after the Stanley Cup, should we be able to play this season coming up, we can have the Islanders to have their last season at the barn, which would be a beautiful thing. So that was my short-term goal. My long-term goal was to make sure that we could continue the development, the plans for the development around the Coliseum. So that's the 500 units of housing. It's the healthcare jobs hub. It's the experiential retail, restaurants and fun places to go shopping. Right in your backyard, right in the backyard
exactly.
of the college.
Yep,
Such
right
an asset. Such an asset to the college, to Hofstra, to the communities, to the entire county. Mm-hmm. So that's kept on track as well. I have to say, the developer that we're working with, again, no taxpayer money. It's all private investment. RXR, the developer that we're working with, is great. He's in it for the long haul. His group, they also see opportunity for investment. They see opportunity in Nassau County, and that's why they're making this investment. So vaccine is important, but the fact that these two developments are on track and Belmont is going to be ready on time is a real reason for optimism. It means housing, it means jobs, it means revenue, it means a reason for confidence and optimism.
That's good to hear. Definitely. Let's remind our listeners as we move a little bit closer to the end of our interview here that you are listening to this week's Long Island News on the Voice of Nassau Community College, and we are here with County Executive, Nassau County Exec, Laura Curran. So I know just some other quick issues that obviously would deserve their own longer conversation on their own merit, but things that are important too this year are the census or voting, obviously, trying to, make sure that we get the county represented, especially in the census, so that we have the funds that the county deserves and needs for all these institutions, like you mentioned, Island Harvest, and again, all the other great organizations helping in a myriad of causes, whether they be domestic violence, whether they be, substance abuse, which we saw you had a report recently, which unfortunately seems to have spiked since last year, again, which was to be expected somewhat. But I guess, and that also does tie into what we've seen with the kind of push for racial equality and for pushing for a better kind of dialogue around, again, community resources and access to them. So could you maybe just kind of talk about those issues and how they tie together, the importance?
Sure. So, John, I'm so glad that you brought up the census. The deadline for filling out the census was moved a month earlier, so now it's at the end of this month instead of the end of October. Mm-hmm. Why is the census important? Who could be bothered? Why is this a big deal? It's a big deal because we want to make sure that we get every penny from Washington, D.C. that we are owed for education programs, for infrastructure, like paving roads and making sure our bridges are intact, for other kinds of services for the vulnerable, for public safety, for economic development. All of that census data is used to calculate how much money we get from DC. It's also used to calculate how your electoral districts are drawn.
Yep.
So if your community is undercounted, you won't have the kind of representation that your community deserves. Now, last year I put together a complete count committee was made up of labor, immigration groups, libraries, schools, business, chambers of commerce, nonprofit, you name it, everybody. And we had a really good response rate. We had 71%. We were actually number one in the state in terms of response rate of all the 62 counties. So that was good.
Great.
However, in communities like Hempstead, Roosevelt, Newcastle, Glen Cove, even Atlantic Beach and Freeport, we were around 50%. So those are the communities that you could argue have the most to gain who are undercounted. So we are pushing really, really hard to make sure everyone's counted. Now, I know there was an immigration question, a citizenship question that was debated. It's not in it, but I think it scared a lot of people. And so our job is to, and it's better if it's trusted messengers in the community. It's one thing for Laura Curran, the county executive, to say it. It's another thing for someone that you know and trust to say it. Exactly. Your information will not be shared with anyone. There is no citizenship question. Your information will not be shared because it's a felony to share it, even with other governmental departments. So your personal information is not there.
Yeah, that's important to remind people because, like you said, it's coming down to the wire with that, and we definitely need those nonprofits and NGOs and the county itself to make sure we get everything, like you said, that they deserve.
And I just want to, you hit on substance abuse as well. We've made great progress in Nassau with reducing the number of overdoses, but we've seen since COVID that number has gone up again. A lot of despair, a lot of isolation. I think people just go down a spiral. And we, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do the kind of in-person follow-ups with folks who have overdosed with their families. And I know that it's easy to go down the spiral of despair, but anyone in the sound of my voice, there is help out there. You can call 227-TALK, TALK. We will connect you with someone who can help you. There is help that's available. Don't listen to that. Don't go down that spiral. Don't listen to that voice in your head telling you everything is terrible and that there's no hope. There is hope and there are resources.
Support is available. That's definitely important to bring up that number. Thank you.
Yeah. People have come to this is the new normal, they say. And I can't roll with that right away. I don't want this to be normal.
Someone called it the new abnormal. That's my favorite.
Well, that's probably a little more appropriate.
Let's call it the new abnormal.
There you go.
I'm insisting that it's not normal. That it's abnormal. That's why I really felt. I felt bad for the kids going back to school. Their expectations were that they were going to see their friends and they're going to be able to socialize and all of those things that they want to do when they go back to school, they're not going to be allowed to do. That's almost, I can see my friends, they're over there, but I can't hug them. I can't even play ball with them.
Exactly.
Sports,
not just the classes, but the extracurriculars.
They don't want you holding a ball that you're going to throw to somebody else because now we're talking about possibly spreading something, To me, that's, my heart goes out to them. It really does because it's going to be sitting at a desk, doing your work, probably eating your lunch at that same desk, and maybe you get a chance to go outside because that's supposedly a good thing. The air and. I think it's going to be really hard, and I think after a couple of days, a lot of the kids that wanted to go back to school might not feel the same way. After a couple of days of being in that.
Yeah,
which is maybe why it's good if they have a hybrid thing. Okay, I'll do a couple of days at work and then go back to school for a day or two, whatever that is. But we're going to see how it pans out, though, aren't we?
We are. We're going to have to make it work until the state opens things up and allows things to allows things to get back to normal. And we want to make sure that the science is there as well. But I think you're absolutely right, Bill. I think kids. They're very, we're human beings, we're social creatures, and that's how kids learn how to be a grown-up, by those social interactions, by being with their peer groups, by being in a structured environment with other people, with other children. Yeah. And it's going to be, something that they'll always remember. And I think the sooner we can get back to that normal school, the better it will be for everybody.
Oh, definitely.
That's definitely true. But yeah, we definitely want to thank you, obviously, for joining us today. And thank you for all the hard work you've been putting in. We know it hasn't clearly been easy, but, it's definitely important that people vote and, that we have elected officials like yourself and the other members that you've been working with, in office when these things happen, who can, be level-headed and really put the time in, like we saw, not just with this, but even with, like you mentioned, the PSEG and the tropical storm Isaias, kind of response that, like you said, it's something that people sometimes, it's easy to just kind of dismiss, what does government do? But when you need government to do something, you need the right people in office. I personally, full disclosure, I'm a constituent services manager in the New York State Senate for election. Wow. Yeah, right over the border, actually. So the point, cool. The point is that, I see those people who call in and don't know where else to turn. And, they see the faces like yours, they see the other electeds, and, they're happy to see that someone in an office can actually listen to them and just empathize and try to connect them with the resources that are available, but might not be that easy to navigate for the average person. So, like I said,
thank you for that. And you know what? I'll just end on one note, and then I'll let you go. But we got a precious democracy here. I don't care who you vote for.
Exactly.
I'm going to vote for who I'm going to vote for. You're going to vote for whoever you vote for. Mm-hmm. But please remember to vote.
Yep.
Democracy is a rare and precious thing in the course of human history. It doesn't happen by accident. If people don't participate, you could lose it. My motto is democracy. Use it or lose it. Exactly. And I want to thank you so much for having me, guys. This was such a treat.
We want to thank you for coming and talking to us.
Invite me back. We'll come back anytime.
Yes, well, we
hopefully next
hope
time
to do it.
Always in person.
Either way, this isn't bad. Thank you.
On your point, though, is that I think people forget that democracy is still an experiment, and we're only, 270-something years old.
The
experiment hasn't played out yet. Rome lasted 1,000 years. It didn't turn out so hot.
Exactly.
Right.
Thanks again.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the long weekend. Take care. Be well.
All right, you too. Take care.